might be one in.
Welcome to Cowboy Church. For those of you that are on the email list, I have a brief report from our mission team to Mexico. I heard about 20 minutes ago they made it back into the United States through the Nogales border. It took them 4 hours and 14 minutes to cross the Nogales border. It is time for change, amen? We want to thank the Conservative Freedom Lovers Organization, Boots and Xenia Hawks, for putting together this town hall meeting. You've already been on your feet once, but if you would stand with me, please bow your heads and hearts. Let's go to the Lord in prayer together. Father in heaven, I thank you and praise you again for the day that you've given to us. Father, thank you for this opportunity to gather in this place. Thank you for the freedom that you have afforded us through this great nation to gather freely, to hear ideas, to hear from leaders. Father, I thank you for the men and women in uniform who have served for many generations to protect this sacred trust, to protect these freedoms that we hold dear to our hearts. Father, thank you for the men and women in this room who are committed to the Constitution of our United States of America. We're committed to our Bill of Rights, the freedoms afforded to us by this great land. Father, tonight as we gather in this place, we continue to pray that you would watch over us. Father, that everything we say and do in this place would bring you honor and bring you glory. And I humbly ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you remain standing with me and join me in saying the pledge to the flag of the United States of America? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. At this time, we're going to hand this off to Eli Crane.
All right, guys, thank you all for coming out tonight. This is obviously a special night. I've got some of my friends up here. You guys know what they say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So judging by this group of guys right here, I'm either going to be a part of helping save this country or I'll be in jail. So, and all I can say is, if I do end up going to jail, I'm hoping that Matt's on the same cell block because he'll keep me laughing. I do want to say thanks to a couple folks tonight. Belinda Rodriguez. Belinda, can you stand up real quick? She runs the Pinal County Republican Committee, and just want to say thank you for all of your work. Belinda asked me when I was getting nominated for this spot if I could bring some folks to the area, and so I hope that this takes care of that. Pastor Tim, thank you so much, brother, for having this in your church. Thank you for being a patriot pastor. And it's important, too, because one of the things I know Steve talks about it on his show all the time. One of the reasons our culture is in such a mess is because we have so few pastors that will actually talk about important things. So thank you, Pastor. And we'd appreciate it if you guys didn't record this. That would mean a lot. We are going to be recording it, putting it out some places, but we'd appreciate that. Now I want to introduce some of my friends. Congressman Andy Biggs. You guys know this guy. He definitely deserves that. I tell people all the time that Andy's the best congressman in Arizona, hands down. I think he might be one of the best congressmen in the entire country. I love this guy. He's been a complete mentor to me when he doesn't even have to, and you know, as a freshman, I definitely got a lot to learn. Speaking of learning from somebody, this next guy from Florida, he needs no introduction, Matt Gates. That's right. As you guys know, Matt's one of the strongest, most courageous representatives we have. He's also one of the smartest guys that we have. And if you guys didn't get a chance to watch him obliterate our entire party during the motion to vacate, it was something to watch. Please go watch it. It was hilarious. But it's pretty cool up here. We have 3 of the 8 representatives that ousted Kevin McCarthy. And that's right. And 2 of them are from Arizona. So next we have a gentleman named Raheem Kassam. I know Raheem was out at AmFest. When Steve told me that Raheem was coming tonight, I asked if Raheem would come up on stage with us because this gentleman is a wealth of knowledge. I listen to him all the time. Very, very instrumental in Brexit. He's going to have a lot to put out tonight, and that's what a lot of this is about tonight, is not only inspiration but education as well. All right, and it's so cool that we get to bring this to our district and just the wealth of knowledge that you guys are going to hear tonight, and I hope you all leave here inspired. Last but not least is kind of a hero of mine, Steve Bannon. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but during 2020, the spidey senses started going off in my brain, and I was watching things, go on in the country, watching things go on in the news, and I was thinking to myself, something's not right here, and I don't think I'm being told the full story. So I quit watching and listening to some of the programs that I was listening to and watching, and I started searching. And I came across this guy right here, and I was like, man, this guy has given me and the rest of the posse signal and not noise. So, Steve, thank you so much for what you do every single day. Steve actually spends a bunch of time in Arizona, and I'm so glad that he made it out tonight. I'm so glad that we have guys like Steve that, could have retired, sailed off into the sunset, but this guy devotes his entire life to saving this country. And so we definitely owe him some gratitude, and I know he's going to bring a lot to the table. We were actually going to have Garrett Lewis be our MC tonight, but Garrett got tied up in some Tucson traffic. And so the guys were like, oh, what are we going to do? And I'm like, we're going to let Matt Gates do what Matt Gates does. Are you guys cool with that? Matt, are you ready?
Look, it's usually Steve interviewing the rest of us, so the fact that we now get to turn the cannons and interview Steve is all the better. I wanted to start, Andy Biggs has just led yet another congressional delegation down to the border where we have seen some of the worst days in history. And so, Andy, why don't you just take a few moments and update the group before we hear from Steve and Raheem?
Yeah, thanks. So I don't want to bring everybody down, but I kind of feel like that's my role, and Matt and Steve can bring you back up. But we were down yesterday. There was already a group of 250 or 300 that were just sitting in a shelter waiting to. They'd been basically apprehended. We were talking to the people. They wouldn't let us talk to those folks. We were talking to the people who were technically not arrested yet. They were from African nations, the Francophone nations. They didn't speak English. They're going everywhere in the country. They actually have now, these guys are being given by the cartels little bitty cards with names and numbers and the city to which you're going with the address, and they are laminated so they won't get dusty and dirty like everything else. And so, and this is in Lukeville. We were down in Lukeville yesterday, and we're just driving down along the border. Happened to come into to the guy who's in charge of repairing the fence. Now, why do you need someone who's in charge to repair the fence? Because that's the way they're getting through. They're coming up and they're cutting a couple of slats of the bollard fencing, then they're hooking up to a truck, because if you're going along Lukeville, you know there's a highway right there that goes between Ajo and Rocky Point, right? And they would just pull that out, and yesterday, by 11 o'clock or so, they'd already repaired 6 of those breaches. And so we're there, my staff, we're there watching, just kind of standing there, and people like to see people coming through. Not that it's a good thing, but my staff is like, oh, man, you know, they already caught everybody over there, you know, about 800 today already. And we don't see anybody else. And then what do you think we see? Here's a group of 25, and they come walking on. And then about a minute and a half later, there's a different group. You can see there's a different group, about 25 or 30. And then another, and then another. And it's nonstop. It's nonstop. And we can't keep up with the cuts in the fences. And so as we're driving literally for miles along the border road yesterday, you know how many Border Patrol agents we saw? 0. There's none. You know why? Because they're all back at this tent they're processing and transporting. They're busting their gut, but their leadership and the leaders of this country have basically put this country on a road to disintegration. We were just talking to Steve briefly about that. We've talked before about this. One of the things that first happens when a nation's disintegrating is the loss of geographical integrity. In other words, you have no border. And I talked to a number of Border Patrol agents this week alone, and they're all telling me, Andy, we don't have a border anymore. There is no border. And so I'll tell you, I could go on and on about it, but this is the Christmas season, and I don't want to bring everybody totally down. I am the coal in your Christmas stocking. That's what I am. But I'll just tell you, one last thing is, last Friday we put out on my social media that there was a group of 10,000 people coming to the border. They were 3 hours south of Piedras Negras, which is just across from Eagle Pass. 3 hours walk. And we said they're going to be out there in about 72 hours or so. The first 4,000 hit 2 days ago. Second 4,000 hit yesterday. And then there's going to be an additional 2,000 to 4,000 people coming across today. You cannot survive when you are letting 14,000 to 17,000 people illegally enter your country, cross your border, be distributed into your country when you don't know who they are. Because you know how we know who they are? We say, who are you? And they tell you. You don't know who they are. You're not sure really where they come from. You don't know where they're going. You don't know what your intentions are. And those are only the people that surrender. There's about another 2.5 to 3 million people who have come in since Joe Biden's been president. And they've been running through. And we have no idea how many there are and how many are terrorists, gangbangers, or whatever they may be. So with that, I'm going to yield to my friend Matt. Cheers back up, Matt.
Andy is underselling the role he had in designing the House position. Andy was one of the chief architects of H.R. 2, and we didn't have to go reinvent the wheel. We put into law the very policies that the Trump administration had in place to use public health authorities. If you can't use public health authorities when they're poisoning our country with fentanyl, when could you use public health authorities? To use those, remain in Mexico, safe third country. But like so many things, we have Republicans willing to design that and maybe initially embrace that, but then the utilization of leverage to ensure that if they want to continue funding other agencies or extending other authorities, that we put this matter front and center. Increasingly, the will and the courage to do that is what is lacking. And that is where your congressman provides so much value to our team. It's why we're all here. We are huge Eli Crane fans because in Washington, we got plenty of think tanks, though none of them are doing too much thinking. We got plenty of people who go around saying they got all the answers. But oftentimes, in those quiet moments, when you just need a reservoir of will and courage, it is your congressman who leads the way and who inspires me and a great deal of us. And the seminal moment I'll always remember was back in January when we were trying to make these reforms to the House to be able to offer our ideas, to be able to force votes on matters, even if those were uncomfortable to folks. We'd sit all kind of huddled together, and the Republicans and the Democrats would come kind of hiss at us and tell us where we were going in the afterlife in some cases. And I didn't even want my sweet wife, who's here, anywhere near the Capitol, but Eli brought his 2 daughters down to the floor, and they sat right next to him, proud as they could be of Arizona and of their dad. And I didn't know Eli too well then, but I looked at his daughters and I said, "You guys have a pretty tough dad, but I think you already know that." And they both nodded with great confidence that they did. And so I can tell you, you have a pretty tough congressman, but I think you already know that. Steve, you just gave this resounding speech to thousands of conservative activists who were gathered. I won't make you give the whole thing again, but you really defined the moment we are in, what the enemy looks like, and how an empowered constituency can ignite this populist movement. So why don't you share some of those themes with us?
We're at war, right? Is there any question about that? You hear what the congressman has to say? This is an invasion of our country. You know what they're working on in Washington, D.C. right now? They've got our sovereignty held hostage. They got Langford and these clowns up there negotiating, we're going to take a tiny sprinkling of H.R. 2 and we're going to do some cosmetics, not to change the invasion. They want an invasion. They initiated an invasion. They're exacerbating invasion, right? There's no question about that. We can't be fools anymore. That's what it is. And what are they holding us up for? $80 billion in Ukraine money. They're only going to negotiate, that Biden's only going to come to the table if it's Ukraine money. What's going on in Ukraine? What are the dark secrets in Ukraine? The money laundering, the child trafficking, the child organ harvesting, the bioweapons labs. This government is totally and completely illegitimate. And let me repeat that for the FBI that's listening, I'm sure. Do you agree this government's totally illegitimate? That this was stolen from Donald Trump and from 74 million voters? Did Joe Biden, would anybody that was a legitimate president of the United States allow an invasion of this country? Anybody? It's impossible to hear and think of. Now, about the Christmas season. Every year, we're going to do it again this year. On Christmas Day, only on War Room, we do the combat history of Christmas, right? Some of the greatest fights in history. Hell, it's Christmas. Let's fight. Let's throw down. This Christmas dinner, when you get them in there and they don't agree with you, get up in the grill, right? No, there's no surrender, no retreat now. The facts are on our side. They're destroying our currency and they're destroying our border. With no border and no currency, you do not have a country, right? And of course, what they're trying to do to the houses of worships and the great pastors we have, the ones that are diehard and hanging in there for this republic, says everything you want to say. But here's the good news. Trenton on Christmas night, the Battle of the Bulge at Bastogne, Chosin Reservoir. I can go through some of the greatest victories we've ever had in the Christmas period. And you know what we need? We don't need anything more than what we got in this room right here, right? You're the tip of the spear. You put in Congress a young man, this guy's a warrior, the man with no name. The guy, he's like Clint Eastwood, doesn't say a lot, but when he says it, they listen to it. And with a leader like Matt, look, let me say it right now. Matt Gaetz is going to be president of the United States one day. And Ginger, stand up, and Ginger's going to be a first lady. Hell yeah. What other person up there, you guys know, can stand up there like Gaetz can take them all on. Right? I mean, all the Democrats and the Republicans, you can't beat him. So we can win here. Victory's achievable. We just have to say we're never going to back off and we're never going to quit.
Amen.
Just like those guys at Trenton, right? And look, it's not Trump, it's not Tucker, it's not Gaetz, it's not Eli, it's not me. It's you. Amen. If you determine your task and purpose is to save your country, your country will be saved. But that's got to be a commitment down to the core being of who you are, right?
Yes, amen. All right. So, you'll remember back when Brexit was just a glimmer in the eye of Nigel Farage, an ocean away. And all of the talking heads, all of the globalists said this would never happen. My man Raheem here was the communications director for that effort. He took the inspiration behind a populist nationalist movement, people who didn't want to be tied to decisions made in Brussels, who didn't want unchecked immigration, and they designed a winning strategy that shocked the world. They executed on it, and I believe that that set up the divine providence for what we had in electing Donald Trump in 2016. And so, Raheem, here's what I want you to reflect on, because you've taken, an inspirational energy and converted it into a mobilized, successful political force. As you look at the Republican Party today, our candidates, the state of these campaigns, how the donors seem to be shifting around in their allegiances in the presidential contest, where do you assess where we are, and how do we get more effective and more capable as a fighting force?
What an act to follow, by the way. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody, and I'm afraid I'm sort of going to be the second lump of coal in the stocking here, but I bring unfortunate tidings because I remember this all too well. 2015, I think a lot of you will remember from reading in the news and seeing it on your televisions, what was known then as the migrant crisis of Europe, right? The migrant crisis of Europe saw 1.7 million people come into a German nation of about 84 million people. Well, if you run that through as per capita numbers, then what has happened under the last 2.5 years of this illegitimate regime in this country has already surpassed Angela Merkel's migrant crisis. You have to internalize that, because back then it was on every newspaper front page, it was on every television screen, and a little bit of a dig, I'm afraid, at what I was told America was made of, is that there were tens of thousands of people in the streets, protesting and marching on a day-to-day basis against what was going on there. And I want to know where that's happening here and why that's not happening here. Now, in a large part, you can say, well, okay, a lot of the people, they're really not acutely aware of just how bad the problem is. The media hides it from them, the politicians lie about it, but at the same time, I don't think anybody realistically is of the belief that America even has a border right now. Remember? Secure the border, secure the border. And today we're looking around and going, what border? What border? And so I have to tell you, from seeing it happen in my country and seeing what's going on, you see all the things on the televisions of the migrants climbing up the Cenotaph, one of our most revered statues, war memorials in the heart of London, and plastering the Palestinian flag over it and daubing Free Gaza and graffiti and all of that stuff that's happening there, that's happening in Paris, that's happening in Amsterdam, that's happening in Berlin. It's all across Europe, and it's here now. And just to address something else that was already raised today, when you say, we don't know who they are, right? We don't know who they are, but we know who they aren't. We know they aren't genuine refugees. We know they aren't genuine asylum seekers. We know they aren't people, because Americans, in my experience, especially Arizonans, by the way, I'm a huge, huge Barry Goldwater nerd, by the way. And I've stood on those steps of that building in Yavapai County where he announced where he ran for president. That's how much of a nerd I am. But Americans are the warmest-hearted people that I've ever met anywhere in the world, and I've been all around anywhere in the world in all of my life. And I know that if you saw genuine struggle and genuine hardship, you open your doors to people, and you say, we want to help. I've seen it myself, but we know who they aren't. And I have to tell you, when I see the footage coming out of Phoenix, the airports, and these people getting on the planes and being shoveled all around the country and handed out things. I said this morning, I said, look, given my name and my complexion, maybe I can get expedited treatment at the airport. Maybe I can get a little packet and given a nice hotel room to stay in New York City. But ladies and gentlemen, my message to you is now. It's now. There is no tomorrow. There is no the next day. You have to take care of this issue on your border right now.
Those who are veterans who have served our country, raise your hand or stand so that we can appreciate you and thank you for your service. The military that we're overseeing in Congress oftentimes is being driven by some of these far-left viewpoints reflected in the Pentagon, not reflected in the patriotism in the hearts and the souls of our fighting force. And Eli and I have been working together to try to get the strongest possible position for the House of Representatives to get rid of the critical race theory and DEI. We don't think that our military should be a performing drag show troupe that fights wars on the side. We don't think we should be paying for transgender surgeries or functioning as an abortion travel agency. And the House passed legislation to reverse those things, and then in negotiation with the Senate, surrendered on almost every single one of them. So Eli, as someone who's dedicated so much of your life to our country, I wanted you to reflect on that process and what you think we need to do to get a Republican Party that will reverse these things before it's too late.
No, it's great. Thank you, Matt. I mean, obviously, you guys know that this cancer of DEI is infecting our military. And it's not just infecting our military. This is all by design, guys. And if you want to understand it, I highly suggest you go study a little cultural Marxism. One of my professors was a guy named Dr. Vodi Bakum. He's actually a pastor. He does internet sermons, and he was given a sermon on cultural Marxism, and he was talking about, traditional Marxism. They tried it in the West to destroy the West, and it didn't work because, we were so wealthy here that even folks in the middle class and lower class believed that they were doing well enough, so it was hard to pit the haves against the have-nots. So what did they do? All they really did was they messed with the recipe a little bit, and instead of making us try and divide us up economically, they started dividing us up via race, ethnicity, and boy, that's really worked, right? And so if you look at a lot of the divisions of Marxism, I see the same thing going on in our military, and it's just, to me, a lot of the fight that we see, it's not only Marxism, but it's also spiritual as well. And it's kind of cool that we're in a church, but it's like when you look back at the founding of this country and how, because we have a Judeo-Christian founding, I really believe that that's why the United States became so successful so quickly, right? And I don't care whether it's in your personal life, your business, or in your country, but if you follow God and you seek His wisdom, you're going to be more successful. It doesn't mean there's not going to be adversity. We all know that. But that's why, I mentioned the pastor of this church and, the fact that he's called the Patriot Pastor, and how appreciative I am for pastors that actually have the courage to speak into cultural things. But this is a spiritual battle, guys. I mean, when we have a culture that, we don't even know what a boy or a girl is anymore, that's spiritual. When we have little girls and little boys that are cutting off, their reproductive organs, and chemically castrating, parents are allowing this stuff to happen, there's a spiritual war. When you see little kids are being trafficked across our border, like that movie Sound of Freedom, and being raped over and over again by Americans, we're in a spiritual war. When our cities are being destroyed by crime because young men grow up without fathers, we're in a spiritual war. And so, it is important that we understand all of this. And, what Matt's talking about is, we in the halls of Congress, we're trying to root this stuff out and write legislation so that we can get this stuff out of our military, because at the end of the day, for all of you veterans in here, how dangerous the rest of the world is. And these other militaries that, we probably will be going up against, in no time at all, they don't care about any of this stuff. They're not focused on it. All they're focused on is lethality, being killing machines. And sadly, and I know that might hurt, some folks' ears, but that's what militaries are all about. That's what they're for. And we need to get back to that because the world, as you guys understand and know, is not getting any safer. It's on fire right now, and because we have the exact opposite of peace through strength. We have chaos, violence, death because of weakness and incompetence.
But Eli, hang over a second.
Yes, sir.
When we put the word out on McCarthy and these guys in the great fight in January, historic, you guys stood tall. We got these changes, single subject spending bills, authorization bills. You guys work like crazy. In the spring, we pass a defense authorization that's not perfect, but is about as close to perfect. CRT's out, DEI's out, Gates and these guys work. Almost all the madness is out, right? You send it up to the Senate. And today, as we speak, they're desecrating graves in Arlington Cemetery today. The Reconciliation Monument was made to bring the country together right after the Spanish-American War, the military and all of it. They're taking it out, right? The first time desecrating all those graves. Everything you guys fought for, everything these people had your back. In a moment, when it goes to the Senate, it's out, and then Speaker Johnson, who's a biblical worldview Christian, right, just rolls over. And not just that, it's actually worse than when you said, because they slip in at the last second, the NATO provision, that President Trump, to handcuff President Trump, right? That what came back was even worse. So how are we, when we play by the rules, first off, you have a massive historic fight to set a new set of rules. You guys do everything you're supposed to, right? And I mean, these fights, and remember, here's what was so great about it. It was Andy Biggs and Eli and these guys at 2 and 3 in the morning voting on amendments that the committee, Armed Services Committee, wouldn't put in there. You guys are fighting and passing these things. It's historic. We got a bill we can live with, and then in a moment's notice, it's not just gone, but it's made worse, and then it's voted on, and 107 or 110 Republicans, I think, voted for it.
Well, there was an interesting study that actually just came out in the last 48 hours from the Bipartisan Policy Institute. Sounds very serious. And they say we are the least productive House of Representatives in the last decade because we have passed only 27 bills that Joe Biden has signed into law, and yet by ratio, we have forced 724 votes on all of these separate things. Wow. And sometimes, I'm a Florida State guy, so Bobby Bowden said you got to lose by a lot, then lose by a little, then win by a little, then win by a lot. But you deserve to know the battles that we are in, that we're still losing. For example, the amendment to completely wipe DEI out of the military lost by 4 votes because 8 Republicans jumped with the Democrats. Eli had an amendment to reduce funding to the USAID, which is where our government becomes a venture capital entity for businesses in other part of the world that's widely been exposed as an entity for corruption. And he said, well, while we're $34 trillion in debt, maybe we shouldn't be borrowing money to China to give it to other countries. That lost by what? How many votes, Eli?
I think we got like 130 or something.
Yeah, so lost by more than 80 votes because Republicans, wouldn't engage and get in the fight. And, there are times then, Steve, where we ask ourselves, well, are we winning? To me, that is the Bannon doctrine. Fill the billets, force the votes, expose the frauds, and then you align to go and ensure you've got the people in place to get the job done for the people. So I don't view it as unproductive that we forced all those votes. I actually think it's probably the right way.
I think it's fantastic. It's just the question is, how do we go next level, right? How do you do all that work? Look, what you guys had in the summer on defense authorization is a microcosm of how the system should work. Then how do we take it to the next level? What do we have to do?
Well, look, right now, we still face substantial headwinds. Andy led an effort I want him to talk about on that very bill where it came back worse. So you may have heard of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISa. This was the law that they twisted to torture, to spy on President Trump's campaign. So this isn't something where they're just spying on foreigners. Now, the Obama...
They're spying on this church.
The Obama...
they're surveilling U.S. citizens.
Appointed Inspector General said they broke the law 278,000 times. Okay? They were breaking the law 38 times every hour. They were spying on their neighbors, their ex-lovers, their co-workers. Andy Biggs wrote the bill and the seminal piece is, if you want to spy on an American, you have to have a warrant, which is so obvious I can't even believe we have to reinforce in law. And we had the rug pulled out from under us under a lot of those Biggs reforms. So why don't you throw another lump of coal into the stocking?
I was going to say I'm glad Eli's here because he is the only one that makes me look happy. You know, he's more grisly than me even. That's good. So we put this thing together. We worked our tails off. We spent literally, in some cases, years putting together this new FISa bill. And it was good because not only were we going to require a warrant where, you know, maybe the Fourth Amendment might require that, but we were going to actually punish people who violated that. You know, that seems to make some sense. So we're all set, and we're going. We think this is going to happen. I'm on the committee that's jurisdiction. Matt's on that committee. It's judiciary. We've always had 702 authority. We've always had the FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. We had the original primary jurisdiction. But you know who didn't like it? They're the same people that put out misinformation and disinformation and spy on American people. It's the intelligence community, the federal police apparatus. So what they did is they wrote a competing bill. And they went to the speaker and said, hey, here's what we got to do. We got our bill, and they've got their bill. And so what we want to do is a Queen of the Hill process. So we're going to put them, whichever bill gets
When they said Queen of the Hill, I just thought we were bringing George Santos back. But it was something totally different.
You're welcome, Matt. You are welcome. You're welcome. I happen to be wearing a tribute sweater for George Santos tonight myself, as a matter of fact. So here's the deal. So we went to the speaker and literally, I'm debating my bill in rules. And they recess for this deal, this deal. They bring all the Republicans together, and the yo-yo I shouldn't say yo-yo in public. The fellow who wrote the other bill stands up there and says, if you vote for this bill, the judiciary bill, you support child sex trafficking and child porn. Yeah, and he goes on like this, and he said, and you support illegal immigration. And so, to her credit, one of our fellow Arizonans got up and said, hey, I've known Biggs for 20 years. There's no way he's going to support illegal immigration. But they scared the bejeebies out of the speaker. They said, look, if you require a warrant, 702 will be less effective, and that means we're going to have a terrorist attack. That's what they said. And so what they did is they pulled the bill. We were supposed to go back and finish debating my bill. We didn't even get to go back and finish debating my bill. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So they stick a reauthorization of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act as it is now in the NDAA bill, this National Defense Authorization Act. Now, what that means is FISA will continue on, not because the authorities continue until April, but because of the way the authorities are structured, it will actually go into 2025. That's what will happen. And that's what we are up against. We are up against, in my opinion, people with corrupt hearts, people who don't love this country, and they certainly don't love the Constitution of the United States. So,
but hang on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Trump movement. You're a bunch of we're all anti-democratic. We're a bunch of fascists. Trump's a fascist. This group, Gates and Biggs and Eli, are fighting not to surveil U.S. citizens, right? To stand up for civil liberties, like our founders, the Bill of Rights. And the people you see on MSNBC and all these great Brennan and all this crowd from the National Security State and Intelligence, they want to surveil. How many? It's 274,000. They want constant surveillance of not just U.S. citizens. They want constant surveillance of you. They want the Christian nationalism is their number one fear. They want every Christian in this country surveilled, and they're going to fight like dogs to do it. And you are the ones fighting for civil liberties of all Americans. Trump doesn't want to surveil any domestic American, right? Unless you get a warrant and there's some real reason to do it for terrorism.
Don't forget, in 2021, it was something like 3 million people wrongfully surveilled. They did things. They were
3 million.
Yeah. So when you hear about the Catholic Church, if you're an Orthodox Catholic, you want to go back to Latin Mass or whatever, it wasn't just the Richmond office of the FBI that was expanded. It was regional. They were trying to make that a nationwide thing. When they've surveilled 19,000 donors to a political campaign, they won't even reveal to us whose campaign it was, but they went into the records of 19,000. And you know what their predicate was? They said, we just wanted to see if they were being influenced by foreign adversaries. You'd need a warrant. Yeah. You gotta have a warrant. And oh my gosh. Anyway, I'll give it to you, Eli, Matt. You guys
real quick.
down.
I need to introduce Garrett Lewis. Do you guys know Garrett? All right. All right, we got some Garrett fans in the house. So Garrett was supposed to be here at 6 when we started. I thought you radio guys were supposed to be on time, Garrett. You got anything to say for yourself?
Sorry, I was out on the east side of Tucson helping out an advertiser. It's, capitalism. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. First off, thank you guys for having us. I feel like I need to stand. Is that okay? I'm not quite as tall as these guys. I blame my parents. Right? No, I'm right here. Don't get nervous. Don't get nervous. By the way, can we just say, Congressman Eli Crane, I believe, helped organize this whole thing. In the middle of Pinal County on a Wednesday night, we have Congressman Crane, Congressman Biggs, Congressman Gates, we have Raheem, we have Steve Bannon. This is pretty freaking incredible, right? Right? I mean, seriously.
It's the greatest assembly of MAGA talent since Donald Trump dined alone. You know,
yeah,
so.
Exactly. And, you know, this is awesome, and we actually want to hear from our representatives, right? This is, you know, the people that were here before, they didn't care. They were all part of the machine. They were part of the system. They all got rich. We're not getting rich. We'll talk about a lot of things. So I am just very excited to be on this stage. You guys are off doing your own thing. I like to drop bombs sometimes. I mean, okay, more than that. My wife's here. She's very nervous, walking, and she's like, "What are you going to say? What are you going to do? What are you going to say?" Just wait. So, you know what's great about this too? Except for Raheem, and I did meet you one time. It was several years ago in D.C. when I went to a fundraiser at your row house, and it was just an awesome experience, and you were awesome, Steve. Everybody on this stage has been on my show. They are more than willing to answer questions, let you know what's going on, things like that. Don't you have a little suspicion about some politicians that are elected that won't want to come on the show? Right? I didn't name names. And there are others. So I think the big difference between this and everything else is that everybody has a BS meter now, right? You didn't want to realize what was going on. Steve Bannon tried to warn everybody what was going on. We now see what's going on. You can't be afraid to call it out, right? You can't be afraid to call it out. And that's why I am so excited for this entire panel and this crew. And I brought this up to Congressman Crane one time because I'm like, you don't really want to do this, but you're really good at it. Do you ever think, vice president, governor, president? He said some things I can't say on the microphone right now in a church. I looked at Congressman Biggs. I said, why not speaker? He looked at me in a way that was kind of like what Congressman Crane said, right? And then there's, very impressive.
We tried to make Andy speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been cool, right? And then
I got 20 votes.
And this exceeded all expectations.
Yes. And then this is no joke. Like, I'm very impressed with everything everybody has done. And I met Congressman Gates for the first time a couple of months ago, and he's impressed. You're spending a lot of time in Arizona. Anything you want to do? Anything you want to say?
Honestly, we're hoping you guys get your elections cleaned up.
Yeah. So that's why, and one of the reasons before I keep blabbing on here is that I had Congressman Gates on my show last night. He was very nice to come on the show. And I said, after President Trump, there are guys that are definitely MAGA right here, and I could sense it and I can feel it, and I think you can too. So I'm like, all right, Congressman, when are you going to say you're going to announce that you're running for president at some point? Like, we need a guy like Matt Gaetz to be in the White House.
Yes, before you got here, I mean...
What did I miss?
No, Steve actually said, that Matt's going to be president one day and Ginger's going to be first lady, so...
Amen.
That's
true.
That's what happens when I show up late.
And Matt's going to let me mow the grass, so, right, Matt? All right. All right.
By the way, that'll be accomplished if Nikki Haley is not vice president with President Trump. You Nikki Haley supporters?
By the way, I'd rather have Pence than Nikki Haley, and I mean I do not have a high view of Pence, but that's how low my view is of Nikki Haley.
Judas Pence.
Yeah. Well, isn't it a big sign? Only Vivek came out and said that he wants nothing to do with Colorado, what they did. To me, if nobody comes out and says how wrong this is, then they're not on our team, right?
Yeah, so let me posit a theory to you that what they're doing in Colorado right now and the efforts that will go way beyond President Trump to take a lot of Americans off the ballot, that we allowed that to emerge based on how we treated the January 6th committee. They assembled a world-class operation of investigators and lawyers, and they got people out of the CIA, out of the DA's offices all over, and they had a vertically integrated way. They figured out how everyone communicated, moved, spent money. They had a file on everyone. I could tell you where Bernie Carrick bought a cup of coffee in New York City. They were so deep into different people. And then when we took power, we didn't use that infrastructure to go and reset the truth and get information out. Instead, it has been this very slow walk, and I think a lot of people haven't been appropriately held accountable. And so now you've allowed this to take hold. And, Raheem is the publisher of the National Pulse. They do some of the best investigative reporting in the world. But I'd love your perspective on how this moment with deplatforming a candidacy, which is the most dictatorial thing you could ever imagine, is really tied to our ability to let them set the narrative.
Yeah, well, I think you said it right, Matt, which is this isn't just about President Trump. I mean, it's almost scarcely about President Trump right now. It's about what he stands for certain. And being here, I'm reminded of the old Buckley quote, right? He said, "I'd rather the first couple hundred people in the phone book. I'd rather the first couple hundred people that walked into the cowboy church than the people that you have currently on Capitol Hill running this government."
No doubt.
But it comes down to this: whether or not we are willing to wield the power in return. And there are so many, unfortunately, of your colleagues on Capitol Hill that are simply not there to wield the power against the globalist left. You have to become serious about that, and they have to be held accountable if they're not doing that. And at the moment, that accountability just isn't there. And we try and do it, right? I mean, between the work in the War Room, the National Pulse, a lot of other outlets out there that are coming out now, we try to show the world exactly who these people are. But make no mistake about it, it's not just Colorado. This thing is going to happen in 16 different states between now and Election Day.
But the predicate for it, and this is why you threw McCarthy out eventually, and why Mike Johnson is, the trial and fact just took the January 6th committee, which is not a legitimate committee. It had no ranking member, no minority counsel, no ability to cross-examine. And I've taken a stand there. I'm going to spend 4 months in a federal prison because of that, right? No, but it's got to be done. Somebody's got to step up. McCarthy had the opportunity to totally throw out the J6, reconstitute it, and have a real committee. Let the Democrats have a ranking member. Let the Democrats have a minority counsel. Let them see the evidence. Let them cross-examine witnesses. That's how we get to the truth based on English common law, correct? That's what we still haven't done today. We've got a little bit of footage, but the court actually took the J6 committee after Cash's magnificent presentation about what President Trump did to actually try to stop J6. She threw that out, took the J6 committee, which they had no witnesses. They had some lawyer get some theoretical. The Supreme Court, because her thing was 92 pages, they did 252, and I think they did 30 or 40 pages of just going over the J6 report. The J6 report is now used as documentary evidence, right, for these other 14 states. And this is 100% about a House of Representatives we controlled that McCarthy didn't want to touch it. He wanted to just leak out enough videos at the beginning to Fox News to make people, to gaslight people. And that's it. We should have, and we still should, get a committee immediately to get to the bottom of J6, including the Fed, and get Ray and all those guys in there. Let Clay Higgins. Clay Higgins says there's 200 federal agents in white buses flying around. Let Clay Higgins and let Laura Logan be the chief investigator.
Just to add on to this as well, because not a lot of people have gone through the actual ruling out of Colorado. They cite in the ruling that President Trump wanted to use the military to put down the BLM riots as proof that he was in favor of an insurrection against the government. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, but their question is, why is it not being done? And Andy, I mean, as someone who was a target of the January 6th committee's process, bring everybody in the room. Explain to them what it's like when our colleagues and the consultants and the pollsters come in and say, whatever you do, don't say anything about January 6th.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happens. And I am one of the people who was subpoenaed, and we said, blow it out your ear because you're not a legitimate committee. You've screwed this whole thing up. But what they have done is they've tried to illegitimize myself, Scott Perry, Mo Brooks. Who else got subpoenaed? We had two others.
Jim Jordan.
Yeah, Jim Jordan and one other. We were the one, and McCarthy. We were the ones. I told Kevin. I said, Kevin, we're the targets. Why don't we fight back? You know, I mean, why wouldn't we do that? And I will just tell you, it's always staffing and advice that you get. I mean, it is exactly what Matt said, because the staffing said, look, we're going to lose that politically. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure you do lose that politically, because once you expose what's there, you end up winning politically. But the bottom line is, you had a court that just said all of Scott Perry's phone, all of his records have to be disclosed. They have to be released. Why? Because they think it might lead to something criminal, I suppose. But the bottom line is he has a speech and debate immunity in the Constitution. But they're going after him to set aside, once again, constitutional protections. And if you don't think that we are at a moment of crossroads, existential crossroads in this country, which, by the way, I know everybody in here knows that. But you got to evangelize that. Because the rest of the world, they're getting either nothing or they're getting gaslighted about this. And so we have got to constantly, whether it's this or FISa or the border or spinning ourselves into oblivion or doing the NDAA and screwing that up or everything else that's going on. Every institution in this country is controlled by the hard left. I'm sorry, I kind of get on the rant there. But anyways, the point is, it's all controlled by the hard left, and we have got to evangelize our position. Because most people, I will just tell you, the polling is real clear. 7-8% of people pay attention to politics on a daily basis. The rest don't.
We want to get some questions.
So hang on real quick, though. Like, you have an army of 300 in here. Right. What I've found out over the past 3 years is that pressure works. So we talk about this stuff. What do you want everybody to do? Because people could take 20 minutes a day and light up the phone lines, because that's what congressmen kind of pay attention to, right? Emails. If they get 5,000 phone calls in a 35-minute span, does that do anything?
We have to pick our fights. We had the pressure campaign in January. It worked. You guys got you got the package you wanted. Then when you guys went for it again in September. The pressure campaign works. It's got to be, and we're going to have a massive fight on spending when we get back, and we're going to have to get to the ramparts. I think it's got to be focused. We got to understand, because quite frankly, some of the spending trade-offs, I don't quite frankly understand right now. So we got to understand all that. I agree with you. Your pressure campaigns, and these guys can tell you, they work. I mean, they were freaked out. McCarthy, look, we had everybody against us. You had Fox News. You had all the media, right? You had all the Fox News hosts, right? Kevin's terrific. Matt Gaetz is terrible. You had Newt came on. Karl Rove came on. These guys are terrible. They're the worst things in the country. And we had those two massive victories because you lit up the phones nonstop. The emails, the big thing's the local office too, right? The local offices are huge. You guys, we know you guys are ready. We just got to get the right, the right strategy. And here's the thing about polling. When they talk about polling, action drives polls. The reason people don't think of J6, we haven't gotten out there and put out the information yet about J6. Clay Higgins, we haven't. That's why if you got a new committee, it's just like Biden's impeachment. Trust me, when we're 8 weeks into this thing, and they've seen the money, they've seen the depravity of that family, right, which is totally depraved. They see how they've taken the money from the Chinese Communist Party, the Ukrainians. Oh, let's throw in Romania and Moscow too, right? People are going to go nuts because that's what happens in a process when you can adjudicate something. So we can get there. We just need to know what are those, and we only can pick 2 or 3 fights, right? 2 or 3 big ones that are going to be the game changer.
Steve, real
in the
quick
next
on that
couple of
note,
months.
what's Grace's app called? Bill Blaster?
Bill Blaster, yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to download that app, if you guys haven't downloaded it, they talk about it on War Room all the time, but it gives you every member of Congress's phone number, email, and social media. And if you guys find out,
And we may put in home address for sure.
either right, either by listening to Garrett locally or Steve, covering national stuff, whatever it is, and you guys find out who these Republicans are who are stopping us from stopping FISA or building a new FBI building for $300 million or whatever it is, bigger than the Pentagon. You can blow these people up, and it does matter. So, yeah. Please download that and start lighting up their phones.
So Bill Blaster is a great way. You guys are force multipliers. That's a way even to turbocharge your force multiplier. It just makes you easier. But these big fights about the invasion of the country, big fights about the, remember, we added $1 trillion in 90 days. You notice they never talk about that? The number one thing, think about it, they don't want you to understand how the central bank works, how the economy works, how capital markets work, right? How it all fits in internationally, because we're not isolationists. MAGA's not an isolationist, right? It's America first. Huge difference. They go out of their way, even on the business channels, to make sure that working class people and middle class people can't understand the way the system works. A great story in the French Revolution. The French Revolution came about, they had to get raise taxes because they paid for our revolution, right? So the French were broke, they had a bunch of bonds. So they figured out they had to call together all the different estates to kind of vote to raise taxes. When they were doing that, the finance minister said, hey, I think we'd have less resistance if we just laid out in these broadsheets the books, right? And so the kings, these guys said, fine, do it. So he laid out the financials of France, and the people sitting there going, we're living in a paradise that's throwing off cash, and those guys are taking it all in Versailles. That's when the guillotines came out, right? When the people understood how everything's on their shoulders and they pay for it all, yet it's all stolen from them by an elite that aggregates wealth, that's when you're going to have a lot more colleagues than you have here today, right? And that's the key thing. We inform you, and then these guys are the tip of the spear, and these are 3 of the best, right? The absolute warriors that don't back off.
Do we have our wireless mic? Garrett, do you want to be able to, if people have questions, we'd love to take some of your questions. Garrett will be
Any questions? Remember, not talk show hosts, just questions. It's always dangerous when this happens. All right, you're close.
Thank you very much. This is basically for Matt Gaetz. I have a lot of respect for you. I think you did the right thing with Kevin McCarthy. Now, I think we need to move a little bit farther than that. I think we need to go to the next step and take out the next speaker and get somebody in there that's got some gonads. Mike,
Well, I'll tell you that.
Matt, you cannot negotiate with evil and expect to win.
Amen.
You have got to take a stand, and that stand has got to be not only on principle, but you got to be willing to give it all up. I am myself in my local precinct. I am with my school district because I'm on the school board, and I fight and I battle these people, and I don't give up. And that's what I expect out of somebody like you. You have the capability of doing that. Let's get her done, and let's put a stop. Let's close down America. Let's close her down. Let's say no more money for anything until we get what we want.
Amen.
It's a simple thing.
Brother.
You give us what we want because we have the power, and those that don't want to do it, take them out behind the barn and have a little meeting with them and talk to them about Jesus.
I'm bringing Eli behind the barn.
Yeah. One thing I can tell you about Matt, sir, is, this guy would do anything anything to change the direction of Congress. I've seen him do it myself. One thing that I want you guys to understand, though, is our current speaker is a reflection of the conference. I wish you guys could have been there in the room with us for 3 weeks as, you know, we tried to pick a new speaker. You guys would be so disappointed with our conference. And Mike, I don't know if Andy and Matt feel the same way. I think Mike is pretty close to, with the group that we have there, the best that we could do. And I know that that's really disappointing to you, sir. And it's just, you know, it is disappointing with some of the things that I've already seen him do. But I'm telling you right now, if we saw a way where we could get you a better speaker, trust me when I say there's no group that, you know, like this group that would actually do that. We do not have a conservative conference at all. You have to keep in mind, we talk about this January fight, the speaker fight. There were 222 Republicans. Only 20 of us stood against the speaker. So we're in a very small minority. And it's like, even when we did the motion to vacate, there were only 8 of us, right? And so the speaker and the leadership that we have now, not just the speaker, but on down, is a reflection of our conference. And so this is going to sound wild to you, but I know that I'm not going to speak for Matt or Andy, but I was a little worried that we might get something even worse than the last speaker we had because we weren't in control. So I just want you to know that if this guy or myself felt like we could make a move to get you a better leadership, we would absolutely do it.
And might still have to. Yeah. To your
Mike,
point.
hold on, let me say one other thing before we go to this topic. They are coming for Matt Gaetz. When we get back there, they consider him the ringleader. They consider him the intellectual leader. And Gaetz came to me in July of 22. And he says, hey, look, I love your 100 seats, 100 years. It's all lovely. I'm sure you're getting people jacked up. Let me tell you the reality. Do you know what TikTok is? And I go, yeah, the CCP asked. He says, forget that. It got all these young women on it. It's a weapon. He says, we're barely going to get a majority. And he says, quite frankly, if it's just 5 to 8 seats, that's not the end of the world. The kill zone if we get 20, 25 seats. And I started looking at data and looking at more data, and Matt was right. But he had a plan from the beginning of how to use that. And so you get very few people that can be strategic and can execute. And on his feet, be as great as he is. He is the #1 enemy. It's not the CCP. It's not the deep state. Washington, D.C., the donors, the media, all of them, they have one enemy. It's Matt Gaetz. And they're coming hard for him when we get back. So we're going to have his back. But I think
whenever I walk to work, my wife asks, did you bring Eli? Was he there with you to watch your back?
All right, so I'm going to be a little selfish here. So really quick, and I'll get to you, sir. So after Matt follows President Trump in office, Steve, you work with President Trump on a daily basis. How is he going? In your mind, how is he going to be different this time compared to last? Is he not going to fall for hire this guy, hire that guy? Is he going to be better about that?
I think you're seeing these teams being put together right now in the focus, and you're starting to see, there's 3,000. First of all, there's 2 million government employees, another couple of million in the military, but there's 16 to 18 million contractors. So there's really 20 million that run the apparatus. We get 3,000 non-Senate confirmed day one. All of you guys could be eligible, right? If you come into the departments, come into the cabinet, you get 1,000 that are Senate confirmed. We have to have those 3,000 ready to go with the policies Trump wants, right? Shut the border down, start deporting people, start to do these cuts, everything you start, drill, baby, drill. All of it, okay? Day one. And that's what we have. And you're already seeing pushback in the media from the people around President Trump, some around it, because he's still got on that staff some rhinos, some Republican establishment, but they're doing a pretty good job mechanically on this campaign so far, so let it go. But you're seeing that President Trump's the leader of our movement. President Trump's a great man. If he had on that, when it was stolen from him, if he had gone back to Mar-a-Lago and just let it go, none of this would have happened to him. It'd be no 700 years in prison. They wouldn't be taking his business in New York City. They wouldn't be doing this on the 14th Amendment. He's got to raise more money and more lawyers. They wouldn't be crushing his family, everybody associated with him going to prison. All of that would have gone away. But he says, no way. my work is not done saving this country. His coming back is the greatest single act of political courage in the history of this country, bar none. And for only the third time in the history of this republic, General Washington, President Lincoln, and Donald Trump is the fate and destiny of one individual, the fate and destiny of this republic. If Trump's not back in office with a core team around him that's focused, right, we're not going to make it. This is going to be a very different republic. Last thing, when these guys fought, and as much, every guy up here loves him and is prepared to go into battle for him or go to prison for him, right? Remember, in January, he was with Kevin McCarthy, right? Because the people around him, he actually whipped for Kevin McCarthy at that moment, right? It was a little soft to him because the people around him kept saying, the polling's terrible, right? These guys are radicals. You're going to get a system you don't know if work, because they were putting the poison in his ear all the time, right? And that's what we have to, and everybody's working every day. You see Cash and these others on the show, Rick Rennell, everybody's working every day to make sure we got the exact right team. No progressive Democrats, no rhinos, all MAGA, and people like Eli and Matt and Andy having a huge role in what's being said.
Hey, on that note, real quick, President Trump actually called me before I was a member of Congress and asked me to vote for Kevin McCarthy, and I told him no because you guys had told me no. But I had to call, you know, one of my counselors, advisor, Steve Bannon. I'm like, Steve, I don't know what to do, man. I just had to tell President Trump no, and Steve just started laughing about it. But
No. I was laughing. I said, "What did the people tell you?"
Yep.
Then he said unanimous. Not one person said to vote for McCarthy. I said, "Well, how's that leave you?" He said, "Steve, I couldn't go back and face him and vote for Kevin McCarthy." I said, "You have your answer." As good a man as President Trump is, when that poison's around him, right? And he always had that poison around McCarthy because this was a risky endeavor. Now it turned out that these guys had a well thought through plan. And we're in much better shape today than obviously with McCarthy, which was a total disaster. He's a total Democrat.
All right. That's how you ask a question. All right, hang on.
Yes, my name is Jack Mattashoni, U.S. Army Airborne. I just
Hoorah.
You guys are my heroes up there. I watch Steve daily. My wife and I watch you all the time. We're behind you 100%. What I am very concerned about, I think, Steve, you mentioned it first came in, was elections. We've got right now in Arizona Attorney General going after 2 Board of Supervisors because they want to do hand counts. I want to know, how are we going to get that Attorney General out of office? And we need to do hand counts and dump these machines.
Well, hey, it's the number one, and I still haven't heard an answer. By the way, they're doing it in Cochise County to scare everybody else.
Yep.
Abe Hamadeh, with 2.5 million votes cast, he's down by 281, and we haven't gotten it there yet. Look, Arizona is the key that picks the lock, okay? It's going to happen right in this state. I think it's still an open question. I mean, here's what I think. I think we'll be able to shut down, hopefully, the mail-in ballots and the late mail-in ballots coming in and everying like that. The machines.
How?
And all,
You've got this Maricopa crew. They seem to be still in power, aren't they, Andy?
Yeah, they're still in power, but you also have where the impediment is right now is that the legislature has passed legislation to actually make these changes, vetoed by Katie Hobbs, the current governor. So quite frankly, what needs to happen, in my opinion, is lawfare. You have got to have lawyers taking this to court over and over again and fighting it. Because if you remember in 2016, that's exactly what the left did. They changed the election laws in 36 states. And so we have to fight back in that way. But
how are we going to do that? The RNC's not doing it. The campaign right now is not doing it.
So
what do we have to do to make that
So
happen?
I can't say too much, but I've been told that there are things happening.
There is litigation going
Sorry to
forward.
get creepy, but it's true.
There's one group that is actually trying to get some litigation going forward. That I do know.
I just hope that people of Maricopa County will become embarrassed enough to try to fix this. Well, you say that, but I'm from Florida, where we had the pimpled Chads and the dimpled Chads. And we were so deeply humiliated by it. It was actually the Democrats who came up with the idea to say paper ballots, and that made sense to a lot of us. And we didn't want to look like a third world country. Why does that shame not infect the Maricopa County people?
So one thing that people don't realize is that counties can do whatever they want. So again, the pressure, it'd be a lot. You'd have to drill every single county supervisor like there's no tomorrow to say, stop doing the vote centers, do the precincts, do it this way, do it. Because counties can say, we don't care what the laws, they could do whatever they want. I also see, we have a state representative, Teresa Martinez. Hi. Well, it's nice to see, too. I'd wish you'd come on my show. I wonder why you won't, but it's okay.
You know what, Gary? I will come on your show.
Oh, okay. When we're done, you give me my number. I know I've heard, I play the sound bites, you don't care, and that's fine. But it also is about making sure we have to keep pressure up on state officials. And I don't think there's enough from our state legislature to force.
I want to give you one other data point. 350,000 Republicans stayed home and did not vote last election. 350,000. And so I do know that there are organizations trying to do
But they're not Republicans. They don't back us.
Well,
remember, this is a new populist nationalist. They're the business class. They're
McCainites.
yeah, exactly. They don't support us. When they come out next time, they ain't going to be voting for Trump.
Well, yes and no. Okay. Some of them are the country clubs.
Yeah, I would say, Steve, 1/3 of people who go to Trump rallies in this campaign have never voted. Do you know that? 1/3.
That's a killer.
And another like 15 to 20% are registered Democrats.
30 million evangelical Christians don't vote.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got to take care of that. But Andy, I'm not feeling it. Okay, Arizona could very well determine.
It will determine.
It will determine.
It will.
So I'm not feeling a warm fuzzy. Give it to me again, so I feel better. Of like exactly where we are. Look, Wendy Rogers, people doing a great job and passing stuff, but Katie Hobbs is an illegitimate governor.
Yeah.
Right? Just like Biden's an illegitimate president. And you see how they roll. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about law. They don't care about anything like that. How are we going to play Smash Mouth and win? We got to win Arizona. And to win Arizona, you got to win Maricopa County. And they got some of the worst public officials I've ever seen. Look you in the eye and lie to you, right? Incompetence and malfeasance.
Yep. All right, we have a question. By the way, this is Steve Slayton. He owns the Trump store, and he's running for office.
Don't we have a lot of great patriots right here? You give these guys are great. Well, we don't have Christians. I just want to make a couple comments real quick. One thing I see, Jack mentioned an item back there. A couple things is that here in Arizona, about the border, we get thousands of people through the Trump store all the time. Number one is the border.
Do I have a promo code?
What's that?
Do I have a promo code?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Yes, War Room.
War Room, okay.
War Room, promo code. Come in, promo code, and you get 15 off.
Do you sell lumpy pillows?
Yes, we got them. Matter of fact, when you talk to Mike Lindell, tell him he's got great socks. I'm wearing them right now. He's a great guy. But we get two issues coming in. First issue is the border. They're concerned about the border completely, number one. And number two, the total disappointment in Mike Johnson. I'm concurring with the folks over here. Very, very disappointed because they had everybody in their hand, just like you say, Steve. They could have done a lot of stuff to do things. I just want to bring up here on the Cochise situation. As soon as Commie Chris Mays sent that out to indict them, I sent a letter to every senator and every legislature here in the state of Arizona and the 2 supervisors who are indicted. I got nice emails back from the 2 supervisors and 2 state senators. What's that tell you? Just like you folks are saying, stay on the state representatives. I'm running for state office as well, for AOD7. And you can stay on me until like Paul. Yeah, thank you, folks. Thank you. And like Paul Gosart says, keep the feet to your fire. And the second thing I want to say on the border, there is a law here in Arizona that states that it's not the National Guard. Here we have what's known as the Arizona Guard. Now, the only difference is they didn't have a chance in time to put in a command structure. And I want to propose, I'm going to try to get my good friend Wendy Rogers to propose it, with a few people in the House on this next session, to put the Arizona Rangers in charge of this command structure. Once you have the command structure in there, then you can bring in the militias, individuals, and plug the caps down on the border. So we'll see what legislators will step up. And I thank you, and God bless each and every one of you.
Yeah, thank you. Just as to the disappointment in Mike Johnson, and I think Eli reflected on it appropriately, that we don't turn this battleship 180 degrees overnight, let me present to you just a few data points. Under Kevin McCarthy, we were told there would be not a second more of the January 6 tapes. Well, we got more, and there are more coming. Under Kevin McCarthy, we had considered 2 single-subject spending bills in 7 months. Mike Johnson's got us almost to the end of that process. Under Kevin McCarthy, we spent 7 months and did not send a single subpoena to a single member of the Biden family. We got the subpoenas out the door. We got the impeachment inquiry validated. And under Kevin McCarthy, the Republicans were clawing each other's eyes out to jump over each other to give more money to Ukraine without any condition, without any consequence. We haven't sent a single dollar to a foreign country under Mike Johnson yet through that supplemental. And if it's coming, he's at least said there's got to be a plan and a pay for. Okay. And even with the Israel money, he took it right out of the rump of the IRS.
But on January 19th, is he going to allow Biden to shut down this illegitimate government? Are we going to shut down the government?
Well, I mean, what we are working to convince our fellow Republicans is that the message out of our party should be shut down the border or we shut down the government.
Amen.
Right?
All right.
So to that end, I want to make a comment on what Steve was saying earlier, but to that end, I will have introduction of a bill in January, the first week, and it will try to prevent this fear of a government shutdown. By the way, you're looking at 3 guys that don't fear government shutdown. But when you look at the entire Republican conference, there's 218 of them that are scared to death of a government shutdown. So what we will do is what I'm going to say, here's how you do that. We're going to take care of CBP, ICE, military people. We're going to take care of the people that protect our rights and defend our country. And then we're going to shut down the Green New Deal crap, all of the bureaucracy. We're not going to pay for that. And then they're going to have to respond with that. And I just wanted to...
Hold on. Are we shutting down DOJ and FBI?
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Asking for a friend?
Yeah. Don't tee us up like that, Steve. That's an easy one. And I'll just tell on Steve.
But wait a second. You asked that, and we get all excited. But I mean, shut down the whole FBI when all we wanted to do was not build them a new $300 million building. We presented an amendment, and our amendment failed because 70, 80 Republicans joined with the Democrats to not only not cut a nickel out of the FBI, but to give them a new building larger than the Pentagon.
So just real quick on the board, I got to go back to the board because that's where I came in. So this, of course, what our governor is doing is a charade, right? I mean, it's just a fake because remember what she did. The first thing she did, she took down barricades in Yuma. The second thing she did was disband the DPS, Border Security Task Force. And when she says she's going to put National Guard on the border, guess what? 62 linear miles of our border are the Tohono O'odham Reservation, and you cannot put National Guard troops. They cannot enter the reservation. And guess where the #1 human smuggling, drug trafficking corridor is in this country? Right through the TO reservation. She will do jack squat. This is because she's getting the crud kicked out of her because she's probably the crappiest governor we've had in a long time. And that's saying something.
Let's do one more question.
Hey, real quick, I want you guys to understand something. Every time there's one of these, these leverage points that these guys are talking about, this is how it works, okay? They always have this boogeyman, this scary boogeyman that they present before the conference and our leadership. And they covered what DOJ, the intel community, and the media did with Mike Johnson and this whole FISA process. But they did it to us in January. They did it to us during the motion to vacate. They do it every time we have a budget fight and there's a threat of a government shutdown. The reason I bring that up, guys, is because this is where we need your support. I noticed even during that motion to vacate, where it took 3 weeks to find a new speaker, some of my strongest supporters, halfway through that process, I could tell they were getting battle fatigued. Okay, they were like, oh my God, we don't have a speaker. What are we going to do?
Post offices went unnamed for days.
I know. No, it's true, guys. And I want you to understand this, because it's one of the ways that they keep leadership and your representatives in line with the scary boogeymen for whatever issue it is. And so it's one of the reasons we have to be educated, and it's another reason when you see guys like us make these big moves, turn off Fox News, okay, please. All right? Just turn it off.
TV for stupid people.
I see how I teed you up like that, Steve? I knew you were going to go off, dude. But no, hang in there with us, guys, because it took decades to get us into the spot that we're in now. If it takes us 3 weeks to get you a new speaker, or it takes a little bit of time to start turning this thing around, just hang in there with us, because they're going to do everything in the world to scare you guys. So you start calling our offices, emailing our offices, oh my God, what are you guys doing? The sky's falling. You know, and in most of these cases, whether it was motion to vacate, the speaker fight back in January, I've had several people come up to me that were cursing me up and down and said, hey, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You guys actually did the right move. I was watching Fox a little too much and thought you guys didn't have a plan. I listened to Newt Gingrich saying you guys were traitors, whatever it is. But just hang in there, because that's how this whole game works.
And didn't you have members of Congress, other Republicans, come up to you privately and say, good job?
Yeah, we did.
My favorite was the one that came up to Eli and said, well, I'm really praying for you guys, you and Matt, that you come to the right decision. We said, well, we appreciate that feedback. We think we have, and this is where we're going to be. And he said, well, there'll be consequences. And I said, I've never had someone pray for me and threaten me back to back in 3 seconds before.
Yeah, the thing was, Matt, you were smart enough to get out of there, and I just sat there and listened to the guy for like 10 minutes. Andy, you even tried to get me out of there, too. Yeah.
Hey, really quick, why do you guys, is everyone corrupt? Why are some of your colleagues voting to fund the FBI's new building, voting to keep FISA? Is it because they're corrupt? Are they weak? Do they have people in their head? I mean, people want to know this. Is it as simple as that they're just corrupt, they need to be replaced?
Look, I think there's a cycle. First, they try to buy you off.
Yeah.
Then they try to compromise you. And then they try to destroy you. And we've kind of been through the cycle of all of that. And when you know your true north, and frankly, when we're able to follow the courage and vision and drive of your congressman, then we come out of it on the other side with a few calluses and a little bit tougher and a little bit stronger and ready for the next fight.
People need to hear it. Hang on, another question.
Hi there. We've been big supporters, and for Eli and everybody else here. The main thing I wanted to ask is, you had said, Steve, about contacting your congressman, they do have the thing when every time you try and call, they ask your zip code. If you don't know the local zip code, they hang up on you. So the key is, and I wanted everybody here to know, I do 2 things. I look first at their website, pick one of the zip codes of their local offices, and if they want an address, I go on realtor.com and put in a recently sold home address, and it works really well because they'll talk to me.
She just won Miss
works.
Force Multiplier 2023.
Yes.
Hold it. We got it. They're cunning and shifty as snakes and serpents, aren't they? We have to be the same. We have to be just as cunning and just as relentless. And this is a perfect example, right?
Y'all have to pardon me if my speech is not that great. I have the injury from when I was on Desert Storm, so bear with me. My name is Robert. By the way, you look better in person than you do on TV. All right, but I have a question, and I'm not going to be long-winded, but if you'll indulge me for a moment, I want to set the stage here before I ask the question. All right, you, Mr. Gates, you mentioned about finding our true north, okay? Our true north was when our founding fathers bequeathed to us the very foundation of our Constitution, to be able to call ourselves a republic. And Ben Franklin said, this is an experiment if you can keep it. All right? Now, my question is, when our founding fathers started us out as a Judeo-Christian republic, we operated on Judeo-Christian ethics. Right? We're no better than no one else. We're far from perfect. But as a republic, we have the best thing going here on planet Earth. We can thank God for that. My question is, we started out as a Judeo-Christian republic. About 100, 110, 115 years ago, we finally became, got away from that and became a corporation where the elites got us by the nomad. I think you, Mr. Gates and Mr. Crane and Mr. Biggs, y'all need to see about drafting a bill to be able to cut the throats of those in charge of the corporation, having them fired, charged with treason, and have the bill set to put people who are God-fearing back in public office, like it was during our first 13 states that started out. I think if we could do that, us being a corporation, no one cares much about that. But if we can cut the throats of those in charge of us being a corporation and return back to being a Judeo-Christian republic, there's the love right there. I think that may work.
So just a quick response to that. So the theme for my office is to restore the separation of powers both horizontally and vertically. It deals with what you're talking about, a movement away from a constitutional republic to some kind of, we're not a federal republic anymore. We are a nationalist, right? I mean, we've become a national state, a national type of state. And that's why it's so upside down. So all the power has been accreted in Washington, D.C., and until we diffuse power back to the American people and to the several states, then we're going to constantly be picked at, and we're going to be subjects as opposed to free citizens. That's so your point is well taken. On the other thing, we could get into the secularization of the United States of America. We could talk about cultural Marxism, which is where Eli came in. Or we could talk about Anthony Adorno and all, and this move away from, they actually moved away from straight communism to this cultural Marxism, which is communism. And that's what we're fighting today, because every institution in this country is controlled not by just the hard left, but the America-hating left. And until we bring back those institutions, until we diffuse power away from the center, we're going to be in a world of hurt, and we are going to continue to this suboptimal path of disintegration.
But hang on, hold. I agree with the first part, which is very smart, and I'll talk in a second about how to. I totally disagree with this concept that somehow in 1872 or whatever we became a corporation. I've had lawyers look at it. I just don't think it's correct. Okay, so I disagree. A lot of people think, well, we became some corporation, that's everything changed. Everything changed with our rise as a global power. After the Spanish-American, really after the Civil War, after the Spanish-American War, really World War I, but after World War II, General Marshall, and that was the beginning of the administrative state. What led us, the irony, what led us to victory, the arsenal of democracy, became an administrative state that became a deep state. That is now the deep state's like a Praetorian Guard. We have selections, not elections. And if you look at the power of the central bank, the power of the easy money, lords of easy money on Wall Street, and our Treasury Department, and what they're doing to debase our currency, and they're the ones in back of the invasion of this country, which it is, that to me is a through line of us beginning as the New Jerusalem of the Judeo-Christian West. And remember, that's why Christian nationalism is what they fear most. They said the other day, it is Christians who love their country too much. Remember, Carville said that you're more dangerous than Al-Qaeda, right? That's what they think. The murderous people they think that you're more dangerous than the people that took down the Twin Towers. So I totally agree with you. We're so far off. The only people that can bring it back, I think, are people of like-mindedness. And I think the central part of that is the Catholic and Christian community in this nation of patriots, right? To help us get back. Obviously, there's a lot of secular people. There's a lot of people, I think, that agree with us in the spirit of the laws, maybe not in our religious practice. But that, I think, is what we've lost it as the Republic, the revolutionary generation thought. But remember, last Saturday was 250 years ago was the Boston Tea Party, right? You had you are the Boston Tea. Understand something. If Sam Adams and John Hancock walked in right here today, you're kindred spirits. You're absolutely in an unbroken chain. You're actually it, and you're the vanguard of a revolutionary generation. Remember, only about a third at most supported the revolution, right? Throwing off the Brits, who are close to getting to the top.
I feel like
I'm
about to get tarred and feathered over here.
A third were Tories. A third were Englishmen that said, we're Englishmen. Let's stay loyal to England. There's going to be a great empire. And a third, like everything else in life, we're in the middle. That's exactly where we stand as a country. But as long as we're united in purpose and task, we've got this. Thanks for the question.
By the way, the other thing to recognize about the difference between the people in this room and Al-Qaeda is the government actually founded and funded Al-Qaeda and supported them. It doesn't happen with the people in this room.
Wow.
Well, on that note, before I get a question real quick, so one thing that I'm just flabbergasted about is this anti-Semitism, and I'm being selfish here because I'm Jewish, right? I'm Jewish. My wife is a Lutheran. We're raising our kids Jewish. She's completely freaked out about this. And yet, she's like a Lutheran American princess. She doesn't like to cook. She spends money. She's neurotic. She might as well be one of me. So, on a serious note, I love you too. You knew what you were getting into. On a serious note, like Grand Central Station 2 days ago, there are hundreds of pro-Hamas terrorist supporters screaming to kill the Jews, genocide, intifada, all that stuff. If anybody were to say anything bad about an LGBT, anything else, it's the Jews, the Christians, and the conservatives of all colors that get targeted. But we have people that are wanting to kill, and it's being allowed. I mean, you guys are congressmen, 3 of the 5. I want to see all these people that are not citizens kicked the hell out of the country. Easier said than done, but I'll help. But I mean, what can happen?
Realize if we have policies that kick people out of the country based on their viewpoint, Raheem is first on the list.
Oh.
So
he doesn't want Jews to die, and then Christians next. So I mean, what can I mean? We this is just allowed nonstop. Oh, thank you very much.
Who funded that? That's a good question. New York City tonight there was 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And Alec Baldwin, who's no friend of our MAGA,
He got police protection.
he would have been killed if he didn't have police protection. Here's my question, being a Harvard graduate, and this is a tough one, but it's got to be addressed because the elephant in the room. Who funded most of those groups at Harvard and that have turned against the Jewish people and want to kill them? Who funded that? No, mainly a lot of progressive Jews. Okay? You got to address that.
They don't like
the
me
only
either.
people that have the back of Israel and the only people that have the back of the Jewish people are in this room.
Yep.
Only MAGA Christians.
Yep.
And until progressive Jews understand that, this is all just happy talk. And I'm telling you, right now, we're losing in Israel and we're losing it here in the United States. These groups are vicious. They hate the West. They hate the Judeo-Christian West. They want to take out the Jews first. But this is Sharia supremacism, and they're coming for the Christians. And that's why we got to stand up here. And all the people are sitting there, don't need to talk. The Israel's tough and the Jewish people tough. It's not that. It's about us. However, Bill Ackman and these guys, Ackman did this big series on Harvard.
Yep.
You go down half the page and goes, because he went to the faculty, he'd given all this money. And he said he was shocked in the DEA program that he found out Jews are white, right? Jews are colonizers. Jews are oppressors, right? They had been funding these left-wing groups, and now it's turned. Somebody's got to wake that group up and say, hey, these people are not going to stop until they drive Israel into the sea, until they kill every Jew in this country.
And then just one other point. There is no reason for the federal government to keep sending dollars to these universities and the K-12 organizations
Amen.
that are sponsoring anti-Semitism.
Well, Congressman Crane, talk about the bill you introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually just dropped a bill, I think 2 weeks ago, that would defund all these Ivy League schools that have an endowment of $5 billion or more. So I think maybe these two congressmen will support that bill. But
Well, Andy, you talk about not sending money to the universities. We haven't even stopped sending money to Hamas directly.
Exactly. No, that's right.
Also, I feel like it's a perfect time for a reading of The Snake here, right? Because, but you think about it. I mean, to come back to the first, one of the first things I said here, we know who these people are not, right? And they're not going to be friends of the Judeo-Christian West. They're not going to have the same values as you. They're not going to want to uphold the institutions that your fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers built. And I look at yesterday, I mean, the problem that is being experienced by the Jewish communities all across America is obviously heinous. But look at what happened yesterday. They desecrated the statue of Lincoln in Washington, D.C., poured blood red paint down the steps and wrote "Free Gaza" on the side. And if I shredded a picture of George Floyd, I'd be in jail.
Yes, you would.
My name's Bob Dosey. I'm from Tucson. I want to address this to you, too, because I don't want to put the three congressmen on the spot.
No, put them on the spot. They need to be on the spot.
That's what they're here
These
for.
are tough guys.
Well, I'll kind of quote them. They alluded to a problem where they have some colleagues that don't, I'd say, toe the line, but they're not quite as conservative as they are. But yet, nevertheless, they were elected to office. This applies to all our political positions. My question is this, because it is a legitimate thing to say, well, they're not as conservative as I am, but nevertheless, they're an R. Yeah. And so where would you two say in your two countries, where do we draw the line between, well, they're kind of one of us, or, oh, hell no, let's throw the dice and see what we get because the current situation is untenable? Because in their situation, they're not getting some of the votes that we need to pass the things we want passed.
So what's the question?
The question is, when do you just accept the weak R as the best you can do in some circumstances?
I think you have to fight hard and get out there and convince people. If we get our message out and we're consistent about it, I think you'll see soft R's become hard R's. You're going to have to accept some, maybe in the Northeast or some other places. But there's enough. Here's the problem I've got. I'm a Southerner. Right? One of the biggest problems we have is the Southern contingent. If you look at Georgia, in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Tennessee, right, in a lot of Texas, you have hard MAGA districts. I mean, these are the backbone of the country, all represented by some of the softest R's, the guys you fight every day on armed services. The problem is they're really Democrats that have just, moderate Democrats that have just taken over. And to me, that's got to be driven home. You could win every one of those districts in the South and pick up another 60 or 70 congressmen if you got the word out there. In Louisiana, the South is pathetic right now in their representation. Hard MAGA, Trump wins by huge margins, but you've got some of the weakest, sleaziest.
Expose them, right? You got to expose them.
Except for Tim Burchett.
Except for Tim Burchett, right.
Look,
But no, Burchett stands out. That's the problem. Burchett's a guy from Tennessee that stands out. Look at the Armed Services Committee. A lot of these guys are Armed Services. A lot of the guys that fought you. Look, to get the perfect Armed Services bill, it didn't come out of committee like that. You guys had to go to the floor and put up amendments, and in the middle of the night get votes to get CRT out and DEI, because these guys, as long as the defense contractors are paying big money down in Huntsville, Alabama, to make ammunition to go to Ukraine, they're going to be voting for $80 billion for Ukraine.
That wouldn't have happened had we not gotten the changes that we got last January. They would have continued to ram that stuff through without us even having a chance to change it.
Look, on that question, look, I'm a realpolitik guy, but at the same time, I'm also the kind of guy who believes that you can actually walk the horse to water and force it to drink sometimes, right? And the way you do that is by leading by example in a lot of ways. There have been so many people I know personally. Unfortunately, I have the great honor of living on Capitol Hill, and I know personally people who come over to my house and say, look, these guys, we weren't sure that it could be done. And now that they've led the way and they've shown us how it can be done, we're willing to throw in behind them. But it is a sorry situation where you have John Fetterman standing for more America First values in the last several weeks than a lot of Republican senators have been. He's happy to talk about the border. He wants to kick Menendez out, U.S. Steel, all of these things, and you don't hear a peep from a lot of the Senate Republicans on this stuff.
I just want to say one other thing. I want to say a lot of other things, but I'm just going to say one other thing. Sometimes if you get somebody who's 80%, it takes us using leverage, which we do, to get that 80%er to an 85%er. And that's one of the reasons they hate us, is because we will leverage the power that we have, where 4 or 5 of us can actually leverage the entire Republican conference. We have to pick our fights. We can't pick it on every one, but that's why they don't like us.
On that note, one little procedural thing that most of you guys don't know about. When I was going through freshman orientation, Kevin McCarthy told all of us freshmen, he said, you guys can vote against the bill sometimes, but you can never, ever vote against the rule. And the rule is something procedural that goes before the bill, but if we take down the rule, the bill can't come to the floor, and that's why he didn't want us to ever vote against the rule. And I don't think a rule had been taken down in, what was it, like 13 years or something like that. How many rules have we taken down in this conference?
4.
4. That's right. And so to Andy's point, it's not just the January fight. It's not just motion to vacate. We're constantly trying to use the leverage that Andy was talking about. Anytime they try and bring some crap to the floor that's going to be bad for you guys, but sometimes they pass these. Now they're getting smart to it, and now they're passing these things on suspension where they don't even give us the chance to take them down. But this is why you'll hear people on television call us legislative terrorists, because. To Raheem's standpoint, I like forcing the horse to water a little bit more than trying to lead him to water. But hey, no matter what method we have to use, we'll do everything we can to keep this stuff from getting to the floor and passed.
My name is Sean Wilson. I'm a CEO of a private intelligence company. I do a lot of work here on the border in Arizona. I'm a resident of Casa Grande. Mr. Biggs, Matt Gates, I met you guys this weekend at AmFest. I also sponsored AmFest through Turning Point USA. What I have to say is it's time to get uncomfortable, people. We have 10 months. 10 months left. If we don't win this in 2024, it's over for us. So it's time to get uncomfortable. I've pledged my fortune and my life for this country. I'm a veteran of the military. I'm a veteran of law enforcement. And now I'm putting everything on the line to protect this country now, because I understand the urgency that we're in right now. And we have 10 months. It's time to really get uncomfortable. It's time to start making sacrifices that we normally wouldn't make. It's time to do it now. We cannot wait anymore. So,
thank you.
Amen.
Yeah. Oh, thank you all for coming. I can't believe it, but I want to ask a favor of you. We all have such respect for those of you on the stage, and what would help us would be getting information from you on who to vote for in the primaries, or not to vote for in the primaries, but who to send some money to in the primaries, because the action we need to take is to fund those that you know, but we don't. Could be a completely
War
different
Room
state.
Battleground, right? That's. I
but-
mean, Steve dedicates a platform
Yeah.
to that purpose.
I
mean, we
watch
do
it religiously.
Yeah. I think, though, it would be helpful if somehow Matt, you and Andy and Eli could help people either with a PAC or whatever to be able to identify exactly who, not just in Arizona, but throughout the country in these primaries. Because Kevin McCarthy's going to come with, what, 25, 35, $40 million to beat all of you guys. Number one, you know that, right? McCarthy's out raising money to defeat these guys, to send a message that if you ever do this again, it's the end of your career. Plus, to this gentleman's point, who else is out there that you guys have vetted that would be the kind of colleague that you need in the trenches with you on Capitol Hill? And we're glad to promulgate it. I think you guys are better at the due diligence to really say, okay, this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the woman.
It's so
right here.
hard, Steve, because the ones that sell out sometimes look just like the rest of us. I mean, you know, time after time, Andy, we see people that say, oh, we'll be with you in the fight, we'll be there, and we'll be behind you. And it turns out it's way behind us, way, way behind us.
He who doesn't know history is doomed to repeat it. I appreciate you, Mr. Bannon, when you said what you did about historical dates. Christmas is coming up. We would not be where we are right now as a free country, or as free as we possibly can be, if it wasn't for the fact of what George Washington did in crossing the Delaware. That's number one. Number two, I've got your backs the best I can. My name's Boots. I know what it's like to be bullied. That's my real name. When I was a little kid, boy, I caught it left and right. A bully will not back down until you stand up to him. And that's our problem with Republicans. They will not stand up to the bullies. They always back down. It's he who blinks first loses. And our Senate especially. Our Senate is, man, yeah, Mitch
Will you
McConnell and a
send us
bunch
a
of other ones.
Republican senator from Arizona, please? Can you do that?
We're trying. We're trying. But I just want you guys to get out there and tell those people that work with you, it's time for us to stand up. And if they want to close the government down, close it. Go pound sand.
Let me just say one thing about the historic. You know, everybody, we celebrate 4th of July, and the Declaration of Independence is fantastic. It's a document divinely inspired with a couple of great, you know, God worked through a couple of great lawyers to actually give us the moral high ground over the British and actually make a case. The British had sent when you talk about Trenton and Christmas, that's 6 months later. That's 1776. When the British Expeditionary Force landed, because they already left before we signed the Declaration, because they knew something was coming. When that landed in late July or August, we lost every single battle from that time until Christmas night. Every single battle, right? The thing went on for another 7 years. You know why? Because we'd never quit, right? There was a core. At one time, it was probably down to 10% of the people who would not quit. As long as we know that that's our heritage, that cussedness, that grit, that determination that is in this room tonight, and I'm sure passed down to your children and your grandchildren, we're going to win this. We're going to have a lot of dark days ahead. There's not going to be blue sky or the sunlit uplands, but we can do this. You're absolutely correct. This is 24, as much as we've been through, and it's not about the most important election in our lifetime. This is something that's not negotiable. Our vision of this republic is totally opposite of what theirs is, right? There's no negotiation here. One side's going to win and one side's going to lose. And so that's why you got to put every day, your total purpose has got to be in, and it doesn't have to be send money. It's just put your being in this, put your work in this. If you guys do that with a guy like Trump, right, and the rest of the country, African Americans and kids coming to us, and people in high places seeing exactly what this regime's doing to our ally in Israel, right? We're going to have the wind to our back. It's us, and the only thing that's going to stop us is them stealing the election like they did in 2020. That's the thing in front of us.
You know, it's funny because that's actually why I started listening to your shows. One of the big reasons I started listening to your show because, you know, as 2020 was going on, COVID, the election, everything, Steve, there wasn't a lot of hope out there. But you have a good way, you know, of just, you know, boiling it down, but also giving people hope. So I want to say I appreciate that you do that every single day,
Look
man.
where we've come from. Look on the afternoon of 20 January 2021. We had nothing. They had the media. They had the banks. They had Wall Street. They had technology. They had both houses of Congress. They had a president. Trump had gone to Mar-a-Lago and was really sitting there with nobody around him. Remember that. We had absolutely nothing except you guys. You needed to wait, kind of sit there and say, okay, where are we? Let me get my sea legs. But it was pretty quick that MAGA said, no way. We're in this fight. And look where we've come in the last couple of years, right? Look at what we produced here. Talk about leverage. These guys had a handful of people, 8 people. Look at Fox News every night. They're agents of chaos. They're going to destroy the country. 8 individuals who would not back down, change the course of American history. That's our heritage. You think the revolutionary generation was a handful of people, right? Real estate speculators, shifty lawyers, and smugglers, right? And they made the greatest country in the history of the earth. That's your legacy. As long as we don't quit, as long as we don't surrender, as long as we stay in this fight, we are going to win.
There are more of us than there are of them. We should do this every Wednesday, right? It's not that bad. You guys have nothing else to do. Listen, I think I've been told to wrap it up because we're past the time. So, you want to say one thing? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Big hand for Steve, Raheem, Matt, Andy, and Eli.
Before you jet, because a few of the people here are members of Cowboy Church, we would like the privilege of praying over you before we dismiss. Usually we end our services with raising all of these folks generally that worship here raise their hands to receive the blessings, but tonight I'm going to ask them to raise their hands toward you as we pray a blessing over you. Father in heaven, thank you for this evening. I thank you for each one of these gentlemen that's on the platform. Father, I thank you for their lives, for their dedication to our great nation. We've heard tonight what lies before these who are willing to fight. And so, Father, tonight in the name of Jesus, we pray protection over their lives, over their families. Father, we pray that your Holy Spirit would go before them, behind them, that you would post guardian angels all around them. There's never been a time in our nation